Hello everybody and welcome to another comparing core set video. I hope you enjoyed the Seeker video, and in fact I know you did. Your comments were really kind, and I hope you enjoyed the Survivor one that I'm going to do today. If you don't know what this is, I'm going to compare the cards in the revised core to the cards that we've seen in the core 2026 set to kind of give some initial assessment for how these cards look and how they're going to impact a card pool for a player that is starting out and growing their collection. I'm going to look at this less as like an entire broad power level of these cards, but rather if someone was starting out and growing their collection, how useful would this core set be? We have the following tiers. Staple, this is a card that is very, very good and likely will have a home in a large variety of decks, but also as a card that can be played without much other baggage associated with it. Just a staple that is very good and very powerful. Strong and universally used. These are cards that I mean, it says exactly that on the tin, right? They are strong cards that are used universally. They don't really have like niche homes. They're just good cards, but you don't see them as often as staples is kind of like where it comes down to it. I think that this is where you want like the cards to be, I think, for the majority, in the strong, universally used, and also in good. These are good cards. These cards then may see if they're level 0 all the way to scenario 8, and if they get cut before then, they're still very good. Usually they'll last until like the mid to almost end of the campaign for that. And I think that this is also, again, a nice spot where these cards are used, and if they're experienced cards, you obviously want to be getting into them pretty quickly, because they're probably going to support your deck very well. Strong, narrowly used. This is a very damning category where the cards are very strong, but they're only used in a specific type of deck. So it's one of those things where I think that this is actually, even though the card is strong, this is not where you want a lot of cards to be, because it might mean that they are played less than the good cards or the strong universally used cards. Obviously, just because they're good, if their use case is narrow, it probably isn't the best for a new player trying to grow their collection. We have fine. These are cards that are fine. They're not great, they're not good, they're not bad, but again, they're not good, they're just fine. These are cards that as your collection gets bigger, they will eventually stay in the binder, or alternatively, if they do come into your deck, you're going to be looking at cutting them ASAP. That's where the fine category is. And last but not least, we got Space Waster, not Space Western. Sign me up for that movie. But Space Waster is the category of the cards that don't leave the binder. These are cards that I wish were not in the core sets, whether it be the revised or 2026. I'm going to start by going through and talking about the revised core set, and then I'm going to go and talk about the 2026 core set. Notably, the 2026 core set is kind of just hypothesizing. I'm not exactly sure where these cards are going to live in this, but I'll revisit this in 3 to 4 years, and we'll go from there. And for the commenter who was worried because I kept saying if I was alive, you gotta let a man riff. You guys gotta stop taking things so seriously, because I'm just vibing, brother. I'm just trying to have a fun time record a video. Alright, baseball bat, 2 cost. As an action fight, you get +2 fists for this attack. This attack deals +1 damage. If a skull or autofail symbol is revealed during this attack, discard baseball bat after the attack resolves. So I think this is a card when you just start out is good, but as you start getting more and more reliable weapons, I think that overall the baseball bat is fine. I don't think it's a good weapon all the time, mostly because of how unreliable it is. I think it's a very good melee weapon design, and I would not be opposed to see melee weapons shine in this sort of space where they either have durability or like they have to spend a little bit more to do the thing, and let the ranged weapons be a little bit more bombastic and powerful with less restrictions on their damage output, but because they naturally have more uses, they are better because of that. Now, a baseball bat with durability is basically a gun. It's basically with uses, but I still think that that space is better for melee weapons. I think everyone agrees. You play baseball bat, you have a break at an inopportune moment, and you never really want to pull it out of the binder. But I don't think it's a space waster. I think it is a good card, but because of its unreliability, players are more likely to leave it in the dust. So I'm going to put baseball bat in the fine category. Up next, we got Rabbit's Foot. As a one-cost asset, it takes up the accessory slot. As a reaction, if you fail a skill test, exhausts Rabbit's Foot, draw 1 card. I think we can all agree that this card is, like, it's in between fine and good. Not this category. But I think that overall, for the impact it has on a collection, I think that Rabbit's Foot is good. Mostly a big thing is because accessories in the Survivor class at level 0 are kind of all over the place. And then even as they upgrade, the accessory slot isn't like crazy focused for what the Survivors can do. They can kind of just make what they want work, and they can find a spot for whatever fits best, but they're not really like gung-ho about it. A lot of Survivors I find when I build, I lean on other classes' accessory slots. So Rabbit's Foot gets played less, but when it does come out, it does perform. I think that it's going to last longer than, say, for example, this baseball bat we have here, so that's why I'm going to put it in the good tier. It's just universally fine. It's universally good. I do this thing where I say like too many of the different categories for when I'm discussing here, but the reality is like I say, Rabbit's Foot kind of exists between good and fine, but even though it is universally good, universally fine, I do think that ultimately I think it trends a little bit higher, so I'm going to put it in the good tier. At least for how it impacted the collection, especially when you're just starting out, right? Like you get Dunwich Legacy, and then you play like Carcosa back in the day when this was just coming out. And Rabbit's Foot had a pretty big spot in those. Like I would do that in Ashcan Pete. I would do that in, I mean, I probably wouldn't do it in, I mean, you could do it in Will York. Will York's still going to fail tests, but he cares less about that part of the Survivor pie because he's a little bit weird. There's no Rabbit's Foot in the new one, so it's not really like, there's not even like really a replacement for it. It's kind of just gone. There still is some fail tech that Survivors have, so I'm just very curious to see what takes this space going forward in Chapter 2. Aquana, 5 cost, 1 experience. If she cost 5 experience, we would have to send somebody to prison. She's an ally, soaks for 1 and 4. As a reaction, when an enemy attacks you, exhaust Aquana and deal 1 horror to her. Deal that enemy's damage to another enemy or location instead. You still take the horror dealt by this attack. Aquana is a space waster. I have not played her outside of when I only had her as an ally, and then one time when I brought her in the upgraded version into Innsmouth Conspiracy as Daniela Reyes. And that was probably like the perfect home for Aquana, and I think that unfortunately she just kind of sucks. In the actual like environment, she was basically immediately outclassed by Peter Sylvester when he came out on the next set. But Aquana, level 1 and also her level 4 version are unfortunate space wasters. So I'm going to just leave both of those down here. I think that they are not good cards. And I know that there are some Aquana defenders out there. Unfortunately, I am not one of them. And double unfortunately, I don't think you're going to ever convince me that she is anything above binder fodder. So Aquana is going to live in the space waster. The reason is, why is she so bad? So even her upgraded version, level 3, it's exhaust Aquana, deal 1 horror to her. Deal that enemy's damage to an enemy at your location. You still take the horror by the attack. The level 0 version, it has to be another enemy. So it's a Magic Christmas Land where there was this like weird design space for Survivors where like there was the world where you wanted to be surrounded by enemies, right? But the reality is that enemies were just better killed, so you didn't want to waste your time with it. So the level 1 Aquana would just never trigger. And the level 3 version can trigger. You can deal it back to the enemy attacking you. You can kind of dodge and poke it. But that's a lot for 4 XP. It's not canceling the horror. Aquana can soak it for you in theory. But it's still just also very magical Christmas Land in a way that in the original core with dodge and in the new core with damage dodge, it's just easier to do that in the Guardian class than the Survivor class. So Aquana, Absolute space waster, not worth anyone's time. Stray Cat, 1 cost, lightning bolt, discard Stray Cat, automatically evade an enemy or location, soaks for 1, and it's an ally. So Stray Cat, I'm a little bit conflicted on, because I don't think Stray Cat is a good card. It's going to live at the maximum of fine. I think Stray Cat has homes in a full Legacy collection, but I don't remember being really excited about playing this card in a limited collection, like when I was just playing with the core set. I think I played with it because I had to, but it wasn't really what I wanted to be doing. So I'm kind of torn between fine and space waster, but I think that ultimately, if there is no other ally that you have, I guess like it's fine. But the problem is that when this card came out, I don't have a lot of experience with Stray Cat, because ultimately it was kind of just immediately replaced by Peter Sylvester, right? Like, again, Peter Sylvester was such a strong ally for the majority of his life, that he kind of just, like, there were no allies that competed with him. Like, the ones that we got were Madame Lebranche in retrospect and Granny Orn, right? Like, every other ally in the Survivor class was kind of just pushed out by Peter Sylvester because he just lets you win the game. So it's like one of those things where I don't have a lot of experience with Stray Cat. So I think ultimately it has to be a space waster. I think that if you're looking at just the image of this card, you might of like this tier list, you might not necessarily agree with what I'm saying here. But I think that it's the fact that even though the card is fine, it didn't really impact anything with playing the core set. There are homes where this card can perform, but I think overall, if you look at the card just individually without looking at like the niche uses, because even in those niche uses, it was still just fine. So I think I'm going to put Stray Cat down in the space waster. Well, you know, the survivors, they can only go up from here, right? Leather Coat. 0 cost asset, takes to the body slot, soaks for 2 damage. This card is fine. Oh no. Oh no, Survivor class. I'm so sorry to be doing this to you, my beloved. This card is good in Will York, right? Because it's like part of his Endless Soak. But it's not really going to move the needle for other survivors. And you kind of just played it because it was Soak, right? And it's fine Soak. I wouldn't necessarily call it even, like, it is good Soak, but I don't remember anyone playing this card apart from the fact that apart from the fact that it was like Will York, and like with the thing with Survivors is just that horror was scarier at the time that this game came out. And then, like, even if you weren't playing Peter Sylvester, Madame Lebranche did what Leather Coat did. She did cost 2 more, but she also paid herself back and gave you cards. So it was one of those things that I don't think Leather Coat is necessarily a good card, but I think it's ultimately pretty fine. And I think that even now, if you did put in your level 0 deck for Soak outside of Will York, you're going to be upgrading out of it pretty quick to find, like, some of the better Soak that exists on higher experience levels. Or alternatively, you'll just play Bandages. And good news for Bandages is it's in the new core sets, so already that's looking pretty good. Dig Deep. So I think that this one is probably one of the better ones of this cycle in the core set. So we talked about hyper awareness in the comparing core class seeker videos and how it just wasn't worth it and it was just like something you didn't want to do. I think Dig Deep is probably the one that was, again, most playable of that batch, just because it could have been like part of your Mythos phase protection plan by just like spending 1 resource to turn your 4 as Wendy to a 5, and then you're like pretty good against Rotting Remains or Grasping Hands, right? And like also like Wendy could use it to evade enemies. I don't think it's good. Like, again, we're looking at this block of cards just sitting down here at the bottom, and it's not looking good for the Survivor class. But with that said, I think that Dig Deep is better than Hyper Awareness. But I don't be surprised or upset when the rest of the cycle also lives in Space Waster. I think that this one is a fine card. I think alternatively, once we start talking about level-headed, I think that this one, again, of this cycle of cards, is probably going to be the best one. Scavenging. Well, this card's very good. So this is a little bit of a tough thing to do, right? Where I think that like scavenging should live in its own tier, because I wouldn't necessarily call it a staple, but I also wouldn't necessarily call it strong, universally used. I would rather call the card problematic. But because I can't necessarily make a new tier just for like scavenging, I kind of have to look at this. In the Seeker video, my staples were kind of just, okay, Dr. Milan was there. I think staple is the best home for it, because I think that, like... So the funny thing about this one is that if you look at it in just this moment, it doesn't seem as scary as it is now. But it was one of those things where you're going to see this when we talk about Hunter's Instinct later in the video, that this, while it was limited recursion, which does kind of give... recursion is a very powerful thing. There's a lot of games when recursion is involved that it becomes too strong of a mechanic to play with. And there are a lot of games that try recursion because recursion is a resource that should be explored design-wise. But they don't put a lot of, like, gating on it, and it just becomes too strong because of that. Because it gives you, like... It basically turns your discard pile into a secondary hand. And this one, though, even though it is limited to just items, like the theory is there, it doesn't say like level 5 items, right? Like it doesn't say like level 0 items only. And as I said, when we get to Hunter's Instinct later, they have some sort of use case for that, but it necessarily isn't always... Like you sometimes have to make mistakes for it to work out, right? To like discover what you need to do, you might need to slip up a few times. And I think that this one, they had what they thought was a good limiting factor to it, but it turned out to not be enough. And I'm curious to look at Hunter's Instinct if that's going to do enough, but it remains to be seen. It remains to be seen. Scavenging is a very, very powerful card. If anyone's played ARKHAM for enough and has seen the growing collection, it's obvious as to why. It actually was also pretty quick when Scavenging started to find decks, but they were used for very, like, much lower power level things by the time, like when this was first coming out. Like a big thing was like looping newspaper 2s to just get endless perceptions. Wendy Adams did this also to kind of loop her amulet for like endless unexpected courages. And if that sounds pretty low impact, it was. And this is how it was at the time, and which is also kind of why like I feel like staple is not the best choice for where to put this. But I think that a lot of Survivor investigators especially kind of just have to find a reason not to play scavenging decks before it was tabooed. Even now when it's tabooed, you still see a lot of it, but you see a lot less than there was before because Scavenging 0 was free, and that's crazy. I think that that's the reason. That's a good reason to put into staple. I think at the time of its release it wasn't, but like it's one of those weird things where the revised core list, it's kind of like looking back. And with the core 2026, it's kind of looking forward. And that's interesting, and it's kind of hard to assess, but also it's kind of like the thought process of how would these cards have impacted if I had these when I just started playing back when the game first came out. And was it 2016? Was it really almost 10 years ago? God damn, I'm old. All right. Look what I found is a staple. This is a 2-cost event, commits for 2 books. Fast, play after you fail a skill test by 2 or less while investigating to discover 2 clues in your location. This card is luckily back. I think it's a very powerful card. I think it loses its power as it gets to higher player counts, but even then they'll still play it. Fantastic Survivor, like, slice of their color pie too. And this was a staple, and honestly, I'm glad it's still here. The card's just really, really good. Close Call. 2 cost, 2 experience, fast. Play after a non-weakness, non-elite enemy or location is evaded. Shuffle that enemy into the encounter deck. This card is fine, right? Like, I haven't seen anyone play it. So maybe it is a space waster because of that. But I do think that unlike Aquana and like even Stray Cat, the power level of the card is there. I think that just ultimately no one wants to choose to evade. And they've done some interesting things in the revised core once we get there to start looking at that, to kind of like give a bit more oomph for why you would want to evade. And I'm going to be very curious to see if it sticks. I'm going to make some potentially bold predictions about those cards, but I do think that Close Call is a fine card. It's a little bit rough for an experienced card to just be fine, but that's Core Set Survivor, baby! Alright, Cunning Distraction, 5 cost event. It's evade, automatically evade all enemies at your location. This is such a weird card, right? I think it's also just fine. Oh my god, was the Survivor core set really this bad? How was the Seeker one? The Seeker one's all over the place. What the hell's happening with frickin' Survivors, man? I don't remember it being this bad. Even like if you asked me before, if they were like, do Survivors have a good core set? I'd be like, hell yeah, the cards are great. No, they aren't. They're not good, is what I'm learning today. This is wild. So I think this card has homes, like obviously like Preston Fairmont plays it very well because he has the resources, but 5 resources is a lot for a panic button, and the reality is if you are playing 5 resources for a panic button, if that's not solving any problems because it's a panic button, you haven't solved any puzzles. You just had the privilege of spending 5 resources to delay the problems down, like kick the can down the road. And I think that that's the reason why ultimately Cunning Distraction is fine. Definitely not a space waster though. This card has left a lot of players binders, and if it was still core set and people were picking up, a lot of players would still take it out and like use it. I think so. But yeah, it's just so expensive. Eucatastrophe. So this was added in the revised core. 2 cost, 3 experience, mutated fast. Play when you reveal a chaos token that reduces your skill value to 0 during a skill test, including the autofail token. Cancel that token and treat it as an Elder Sign token instead. Remove Eucatastrophe from the game. I think Eucatastrophe is a good card. I wouldn't say it's strong and universally used, and I also wouldn't say it's strong and narrowly used. I only really play it in Silas or Will Yorick. And I think that while that kind of falls into the space of strong and narrowly used, I think that's just because Lucky 3 exists. But if I just cracked open this box of cards, and I was like looking at what to do, I would play like Luckies, and like Eucatastrophes would basically just be like additional copies of those Luckies. Maybe I'm wrong with this one. I'd love to know what people think where they would put Eucatastrophe, because I don't think it's universally used. I don't think it's narrowly used by other people, but it might be narrowly used by me. I just don't see people play it. You know what? I'm gonna put it down here. I convinced myself. Again, the revised core has a little bit of the it's like the looking back at it, so it kind of changes the assessment values slightly. But I think that this is a strong but narrowly used card. Are Survivors gonna have a strong and universally used card? I don't think so. And I don't know if that's good for the Survivor class. Man, this is blowing my mind. I feel like I'm having a crisis. Again, like when we were talking about the new core, I was like, yeah, Survivor has a great core set. They're going to be fine. Survivors have good investigators, but their player cards are ass. And apparently I forgot about that's kind of their design. I mean, not so much anymore. The new cards for Survivor look really good. This is going to be a big glow up for Survivors. Are you kidding me? All right. On to Lucky Zero, 1 cost event, fast play when you fail skill test, get +2 to your skill value for that test. This is a staple card. I think it's less good than it was when you first open it from the box. And it was a one thing where like I could see a case of putting it in here. But I think a lot of people still play Lucky in their Survivor decks, and Lucky still saves them a lot of the time. And when they upgrade into Lucky 3, it's like a noticeable power spike. So I'm going to put that in the staple one here. I think it is just still a very good card. Even if I think its value has gone down, I still think it's better than this, and I still think generally it's considered to be a staple. That was a weird transition. The fade because the cards are slightly different. Oh, I don't like that. I don't like that one bit. Anyway, Lucky 2. It's the same card, except it costs 2 experience and you have to draw a card. It is a good card. I mean, the problem is that I think realistically it's actually probably just fine. But I'm going to put it in good. Just to throw the survivors a bone, because I'm starting to feel bad. But it's definitely like Rabbit's Foot is kind of hovering between them, which is really rough. Again, like the 2 good cards for Survivor are kind of both also at the top of fine. Ooh, that's no good. Okay, so the reason why this card is only just like, is not great, I dropped my pen, is just because like it's not worth the 2 XP, right? Oh man, you convinced me. No one plays Lucky 2 anymore unless it's like a stopping point for Lucky 3. So I'm going to put it down in fine. Like, realistically, I would rather bank the 2 XP. I mean, that's a crazy thing to say because I wouldn't. I would just get Lucky 2. But, like, if to take a stand against Lucky 2, I just think it's not a great upgrade anymore. Mostly because Lucky 3 just, like, destroyed it, so no one really plays this anymore. It's fine, but I'm not. I'm looking at upgrade. Like, with this, if I had to stay at Lucky 0 for my whole deck, I would, right? I'd still play Lucky, but do that. If I had to play Lucky 2, I just wouldn't. Like, I'd spend my experience elsewhere. Like, I only want Lucky 3. So, like, even if Lucky 2 was in my deck, because I could get Lucky 3, I would cut it out at, like, the next moment. So I'm going to put that there. Yikes. If you disagree with that, let me know. Fast. Play only during your turn. This is Will to Survive, by the way. Until the end of your turn, do not reveal Chaos tokens with any skill test you perform. 4 cost, 3 experience. We often call this card like the best card we never play. So I'm going to just put it in the good tier. I still think this card is very good. The problem is it's very expensive, and I mean, the real big problem with Will to Survive is that, like, survivors don't really have a payoff for it. I think probably the best use case for Will to Survive is like a Wendy Adams deck where you use like Haste and Leo DeLuca to take like 5 actions in your turn to get the most value out of it. I don't think it's a bad card. Again, I think it's the best card we never use. But I think that even if you're just taking tests, you're gonna do okay. Good card. Definitely not a staple, but definitely above fine. So we're gonna put that there. And last but not least, we got Survival Instinct. This is a skill, commits for a foot. If this skill test is successful during an evasion attempt, the evading investigator may immediately disengage from each other enemy, engage with them, and may move to a connecting location. This is a good card. This is a good skill. It gets the job done. It's like an evade and a move. It's kind of like on the level of like Stunning Blow where you get like 2 actions for 1 actions. This was a card that, it's 1 actions? I'm losing it, everybody. Maybe it's, again, just the shock that I'm witnessing all this. But the big thing about Survival Instinct is that I didn't play this when it first came out because, again, it was just better to fight enemies. But as survivors got more tools for evading, I think that Survival Instinct really kind of made it work. But there was that new card that was in Drowned City, the one with Rita jumping over the thing. I don't know what it's called off the top of my head, but it's kind of taken Survival Instinct's lunch. So I feel like Survival Instinct, actually, this kind of slice might be leaving the Survivor pool on the skill level. But we'll have to remain to see. I mean, we can maybe see right now when we start looking at the 2026 core. So this was not what I expected. This is not what I expected here, but... I mean, they can only go up from here, right? They have, like, compared to the Seeker class, right? Seeker has 5 cards in their bottom 2 tiers. Like, that's not bad compared to They have 6 cards in the fine tier. Like, that's not great. That's not great. All right, but let's look at the Core 2026. We'll talk about these cards and kind of just hypothesize. This is all hypothetical as we kind of get this through, except for the cards that do exist. So, Meat Cleaver. This is a 3-cost asset. As an action, fight. You get +1 fist for this attack, +2 instead if you have 3 or fewer remaining sanity. If this attack defeats an enemy, you may heal 1 horror. As a reaction, when you trigger the above action ability, take 1 horror. This attack deals +1 damage, takes up the hand slot. So I'm not the biggest fan of Meat Cleaver personally in Legacy. And even when it came out, just because I think that it wasn't reliable, because I think there were just like better weapons that just did the thing. And I think that because of that, I was just never drawn to Meat Cleaver, right? Like, that was kind of like my the Spike vibe inside of me. It was just like, why would I play Meat Cleaver when I could just like play a weapon that does that without any sort of strings attached? And like, yes, Survivors had less of that, but I would like lean onto my off class until I could buy better things, where I would just take like the Sledgehammer and I would choose to take the -1 fist and make up with it for it in other ways, compared to doing this like horror song and dance. With that said, I see Bryn use, and I saw Bryn use Meat Cleaver to great success. I think that overall, I want to put it in fine. I'm going to put it in fine. And the reason for that is because I think if you're playing Meat Cleaver, you're going to want to upgrade into the level 3 version ASAP, because it is a lot more consistent, and I think generally just a lot better. The horror healing is nice, but I think that this is not a permanent addition to your deck. I think that even once we get to see new cards in this, like in Chapter 2, I do think that Meat Cleaver is going to falter in the later campaigns if you do not upgrade into the other version. So I'm going to put the Meat Cleaver level 0 in fine. I don't think it's a bad weapon, but I don't think it's there to last for all the scenarios, which is where we see the fine tier. Like, realistically, I want to spend, if this was my weapon, I want to spend my first 6 experienced into this. So that to me is fine. If I could wait for like scenario 5 and I knew this could carry me until then, I would put this up here, but because I want to get the upgraded version ASAP, I don't want to frick with that. The upgraded version, 2 cost, 3 experience, so it costs 1 less, which sounds like a small upgrade, but is actually, those are always really big upgrades when the cost gets a little bit cheaper. Action, fight, you get +2 fists for this attack, +3 instead if you have 3 or fewer remaining sanity. If this attack defeats an enemy, you may heal 1 horror. As a reaction, when you trigger the above action ability, take 1 horror. This attack deals +1 damage. So why do I think the level 3 version is so much more important than the level 0 version? The big thing is the +1 attack when you do not have 3 or fewer remaining sanity versus the +2 attack when you do not have 3 or fewer remaining sanity. This means that you can be more, you can be less worried about doing the reaction ability to take that +1 damage, because that extra fist boost is going to give you more consistency over high attack enemies. Like, let's just say, for example, Izzy Barnes, what, she has 3 fists, right? Izzy Barnes with this version, if she doesn't have the 3 sanity on her, 3 or fewer remaining sanity, she only gets to attack at 4. With this one, she gets to attack at 5, which is a number that can go toe-to-toe with the 4 attack enemies, especially if you're committing some skills or having some other backup with that as well. So I think that's why it's so important. Just like number bigger means more consistency. So I'm going to put Meat Cleaver 3 in the good tier. Up next, we got Old Compass. This is a 2 cost, 2 experience, hand slot item tool. As an action, investigate using your book. Your location gets -1 shroud for this investigation. If you fail, you may exhaust Old Compass to attempt this test again. If you do, your location gets -2 shroud for this investigation instead. Yeah, I think this is a good card. I think that this card looks a little bit unimpressive when you compare it to the Legacy card pool, right? Because you're essentially paying... Like, if we cover up the if you fail, which honestly is actually an okay ability, but it's one of those things where you know, you're spending your actions and you're trying to pass because you usually are like committing things or stuff like that. Like maybe you're just throwing this against like the wall to see what sticks. But like the ability is actually just Lantern, right? And like that card I do think is underplayed, but the effect is pretty unexciting. So I think again that if you're looking at this as like the legacy perspective, it's not really like making you do a cartwheel in excitement. But I think that generally this is going to be a really nice card for survivors in Chapter 2. And I think this is also a really nice card for new players who are coming into the game and attempting to grow their collection. So I think Old Compass, while not really a flashy card, I think is going to be a good card to build a foundation around investigating as a survivor. Especially you can go like the hand crank flashlight and then like amplify it or replace them with this. And I think that that is pretty dang neat. So yeah, I think Old Compass, it's a good card. Alexei Saburov, 3 cost. Ally, sucks for 2 and 2 is a reaction when your turn begins. Heal 1 damage or horror from Alexei Saburov. This guy with Meat Cleaver is going to make it more appealing to play with and like the core experience. I think that this guy is going to be... so I'm torn between the top 2 tiers. He's definitely above good. I think that this is actually a really powerful ally. He's less powerful than Peter Sylvester and then, by extension, Jessica Hyde. And I think that's a good thing because I implied earlier that Peter Sylvester was a little bit problematic because he kind of just swallowed the ally pool for the survivors in a way that is not talked about as much as Dr. Milan. I think both of them are actually equally problematic. And I think that Alexei, because he is still Peter Sylvester-like, but not as strong, he's going to be less bad. Because the big thing about Peter is that, like, if you took 2 horror, he solved that for you, and that's really good. Alexei can't solve 2 horror, just without any sort of other tricks that we don't even know if they're going to exist in Chapter 2. So I think that makes him less good. So I'm going to put him in strong, universally used, because I imagine that once survivors might actually want to upgrade out of him. If there is like, I mean, if there was an upgraded version of the Miguel de la Cruz deck, that would actually be freaking, I mean, too good, probably. Unless he was costed a bit more conservatively. But I think he's a very strong ally, and I think he has a lot of cohesion with this survivor pool. And I think that even like the Guardian stuff is what we've been kind of seeing with Daniela at the time of I'm recording this video. I think that it's going to really, really pop off there. So Alexei Saburov, I'm going to put in the strong, universally used, but he's knocking on the door to staple. I think he has the potential to get there. I just don't think with the knowledge I have and what I've seen so far from the Survivor pool and the Guardian pool, and then also, I mean, this might change once I see the start of the Evergreen decks. But he's knocking on stable, but he's not there yet. Jumpsuit. This is a 1-cost asset. As a lightning bolt during your turn, discard it. Choose a tool or weapon asset in your discard pile and add it to your hand. 2 soak and takes up the body slot. So this is the leather coat. Yeah, I think a leather coat, but with some recursion. And leather coat, as we know, I put down in fine. It costs a resource, jumpsuit instead, but you can grab a weapon or a tool. The only weapons or tools that I can think of on the top of my head that are discarding in the new core are the hand crank, flashlight, and the broken bottle, which I'm not really chomping at the bit to pick back up. But this is recursion. And what was I talking about recursion? It's very powerful. Notably, this is like scavenging, where the fact is that, yes, it has a restriction. It's tool or weapon assets. But you know what it does not say? It does not say level 0 tool or weapon asset. It does not even say level 0 to 2 weapon to tool asset. So you can use this to bring back signatures if they get discarded. You can use this if they're items or tool or weapons, obviously. You can use this to get back big weapons that maybe you can discard through other means down the road as the card pool grows. I think that this one is one that we might look back on and be like, whoa, that was a little bit of a problem. But for right now, I think I'm going to just put it in good. Because that's just where my gut feels. I don't think it's going to be universally used yet. I'm very curious to see if this maybe starts showing up already in Legacy. If people start like theory crafting some decks around Jumpsuit. But that remains to be seen. But Very, very interesting to watch this card to see how it fits into the card pool and how Chapter 2 grows around it, because they do need to be aware of it, because unlike Hunter's Instinct, which we're going to be talking about very soon, this one doesn't have the same level of restrictions that that card has. But funnily enough, I think right now Hunter's Instinct is stronger than Jumpsuit, which might sound silly, but that's just what my gut is telling me from my card assessment, which could be completely out to lunch, mind you. It could be completely out to lunch. Bandages. This is a 2-cost asset, uses 3 supplies. If there are no supplies on bandages, discard it. As a reaction, after Investigator or ally asks your location takes 1 or more damage, spend a supply, heal 1 damage from that card. This is a strong and universally used card. It's very good now. A lot of players play it in Survivor just to keep themselves and their teammates alive. If there's ever allies that heal damage or horror, take damage or horror and can benefit from the healing from this, is really good. So I think that that's really nice. I think that Izzy Barnes is going to like it because of her signature weakness. There's a lot of interesting things that bandages also, they discard themselves. So you can't bring them back with Jumpsuit because Jumpsuit's only tool or weapon. But yeah, I'm curious to see if there's any like kind of that support, because we always talk about how like Survivor automatically discarding stuff when it empties is a little bit spooky because it kind of just makes all their other recursion better. And I'm very curious to see how this goes with bandages going forward, if they kind of support this kind of thing, because Hunter's Instinct also has it, I believe. So yeah, I'm going to kind of flag that and watch this, but I think we can all agree that bandages is a strong card and it is universally used. I think that it does get cut eventually, but even if it doesn't, I can see it lasting the wrong way. Like, if you wanted to put it in good, I'd be totally down with that, but my gut says strong and universally used. Again, this is kind of like with the insight of going forward. Hey, I've been talking about Hunter's Instinct for a while, so it's finally here on the screen. 2-cost talent asset, limit 1 per investigator, uses 3 supplies. If there are no supplies on Hunter's Instinct, discard it. As a reaction, after you engage an enemy, spend 1 supply and exhaust Hunter's Instinct. Add a level 0 event in your discard pile to your hand. This thing is going right into the staple tier. I think this card is nuts. I think this card is very powerful. I think this card, even with its level 0 restriction, which thank God it has, is going to be a very impactful card on the card pool, both in current and also in Legacy. I think that already if people haven't started theory crafting this card in Legacy, what are you doing? Start having some fun, start figuring this thing out. Even baseline, just grabbing emergency caches is an okay place to start with this, and like that's the floor, and I think that's a pretty good floor to go. I'm excited to watch this card and see if maybe Hidden Jumpsuit I'm wrong and I should have these swapped, but I think Hunter's Instinct is just a wild card. And like, the only action you need to do to get the events back is the first one, and then everything else is just going to happen when you play the game. Just in the Mythos phase, like even just like Izzy Barnes, right? Izzy Barnes can ward a protection during the Mythos phase to put the horror on Alexei Saburov. Then the next Mythos phase, grab an enemy, because that's what she drew during the Mythos phase, get her ward of protection back, and then like do it again. Like, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good floor. I think this is a very powerful card. Level-headed, 2-cost asset. As Lightning Bolt, spend 1 resource, you get +1 brain for the skill test, or +1 foot, and you get +2 if it's on a scenario card. Remember what I talked about earlier in this video about Dig Deep? How this one was the best one because it can be used defensively. This one does that, but even better. So I think it is a tier above. So I'm going to put level-headed in the good tier for all the things I said about Dig Deep, but just, again, slightly better. I could see all of this cycle again kind of dropping down to fine down the road. But just because like how I think the Sparrow Mask is one of the most easy to play of the mask cycle, I think that level-headed is also going to be the most easily played of this cycle as well. Look what I found! Staple Still. Great card. Very good card. Shove Off. This is a 1-cost event, Evade. If you succeed, deal 1 damage to the evaded enemy. If you fail, return Shove Off to your hand at the end of your turn. I'm curious to see how this one plays. Do you know what it reminds me a lot of? Stunning Blow. I'm going to put this in the good tier. I think this is actually a pretty legit event for level 0 decks, and I'd be happy to run it in the right deck all the way up to like scenario 5, 6. I mean, yeah, like I said, it just reminds me a lot of Stunning Blow. Stunning Blow obviously has a higher ceiling because you can use it for attacks with like a weapon asset, but I think that Shove Off is kind of just fine, and like even like at like its worst, which is just like you're basically using it to pay 1 to basic fight an enemy with a Stunning Blow equipped, right? It doesn't have to be like you can use it on elite enemies, which is really nice. I think that like the reaction of this card was pretty muted, but I think like the use case with it is pretty all right because again, it's not really an evade action. Like it is, but it's like a poke 1, which means that again, like you can have this window where like you evade an enemy. You can evade an enemy, poke them for 1, finish them off with a meat cleaver without having to take like some extra horror, right? Or like if they have 3, take that extra horror to do it. You can use your Hunter's Instinct to evade the enemy, poke them down, and then like get them ready up next turn to either grab a Shove Off or another like level 0 event. I think that Shove Off actually is going to be a pretty nice piece for decks to just give you a tool to use when you need it. And it has pretty alright symbols when you don't. I think this is a good card. Yeah, I think Shove Off is going to make an impact on the game. Scrape By. This is a 1-cost event. Fast. Play when you would fail a skill test during which a non-auto-fail symbol token was revealed. You succeeded that skill test instead. If it's a token with a symbol was revealed during that skill test, take 1 horror. So this is kind of like super lucky, right? Like, it's the same sort of kind of idea where you would fail. It's kind of like also, it's not Eucatastrophe level, but it's kind of trying to do an impression of Eucatastrophe. I think that ultimately, it's like lucky it's going to be in one of these ones. I guess the question is, how much do you want to spend 1 experience for a lucky? And the reason also why Lucky 3 is so good is because it costs 0 and it can use for other people. This is only you. It's going to be in one of these 2 tiers. I just have to decide where I want to put it with my hunch, right? Let me just read the card again. And I'm going to just like focus really hard on it, so I'm not going to talk, so just bear with me. I think realistically it's probably going to be a staple, especially for new players if they don't have Lucky. I think that this card's going to just like fill that hole, and it's going to be really good protection. So I'm going to put it in staple. I'm going to round up a bit. Like it's like a 9.56. So let's round it up to a to a 10 rather. I think that's what we're going to do here. I think it's a very powerful card. I like what it does. I like that it has a little bit of downside. I kind of really enjoy seeing that in the survivor class. Yeah. I think it's going to be a staple. I do think so. All right, On the Brink. This is a 2-cost skill. One thing I do like is that survivors, because of Izzy, but also I think it's a nice little like stamp on the survivor class, where in the original core they had 1 skill, and I really like that they have 3 skills in the new one. So On the Brink. Wild. If this skill test fails, return each other card committed to this test to its owner's hand and draw 1 card. I think this card, I don't think it's a space waster. Because I think that, like, worst case, you can upgrade it out of, Unexpected Courage into this. But I also don't think the card is particularly great. I think it was, like, Dare BK who said that this card was, like, Christmas Land. Like, it fits into the Christmas Land slot where, like, you have this, like, thing in your mind where you're like, ooh, this is going to work. I'm going to have all these cards committed. I'm going to draw the auto fail, and then I'm going to return it to my hand. But the reality is why are you concerned about drawing the auto fail? Like, it could happen, but unless you have a reason why you're going all in, like, you're kind of taking that risk anyway. And, like, doing this, is it worth it to experience through that risk? Or do you just, like, take the risk and not worry about like the 1 in 16 chance, not like warp your deck and game plan around it. I think it's obviously better with Izzy because she can recur it from her discard pile, right? I'm pretty sure she can. I think her ability is just skill, right? I don't think it specifies what level. And I think that makes it a little bit nicer. But I think as a whole, the card's just fine. I'm gonna, maybe someone can talk me up on it, but I don't really, I'm not really too blown away by On the Brink. Slippery. This is a skill, commits for a foot. If this skill is successful when evading a non-elite enemy, enemy does not ready during the next upkeep phase. Yeah, I think this one's also good. This is what, you especially compare this to Survival Instinct, and you see what years of the game have taught the designers, where the multiple evade is less likely than, like, the freeze. The freeze on the evade is where evasion is actually really good, so I think that Slippery is going to be very good because of that. And then we have Timely Intervention. This is a fortune skill, max 1 committed per test, commits for a brain or a foot, and a wild. You may commit Timely Intervention from your hand after revealing chaos tokens during a skill test you're performing. This is also just lucky, a little bit more limited. I'm going to throw it in the good. I think it's less good than, I mean, maybe it'll be strong and universally used. I'll put it in strong and universally used because it is kind of just lucky. It's a free lucky, but only the +2 for like Mythos phase stuff, or alternatively, again, like even like Izzy stuff, that kind of thing, so with like the mystic things. But yeah, I think I'll move it up because again, it is lucky and it's a free lucky, so can't knock that. And even half a lucky, as we saw with Granny Orn 4, is still a pretty good card. So I think it should be pretty obvious how much the Survivor core pool has improved from the revised core, which I did not realize how bad it was. And you know what? This card even could be considered a space waster because I haven't seen anybody play it. But I'm not going to move it down because I respect you enough, Survivor. You are my favorite class, even though my confidence is shook because of this. Wow. Yeah, this is a crazy improvement in comparison. This is going to be really fun to look at these two images side by side, which you can actually find down in the video description, a link to these images on the Patreon for free. You do not need to pay for it to see these images. However, if you do want to support the channel, you can do so by liking, commenting, subscribing, or if you want to go above and beyond, join the Patreon. The lowest tier is $3 American a month. Yeah, I had fun doing this. I'm looking forward to do this with Guardians. That'll be the next one because that's what's currently being spoiled. We're almost done spoiler season by the time I'm recording this video, by the time it comes out, for the Guardian class anyway, and then we have Mystics and Rogue after that, which should be pretty cool. This is fun. Let me know what you think and compare it to some of my thoughts here and how you feel the cards are going to shape up. But I think that this is a crazy improvement for the Survivor class, and I think it really, really, really shows. So thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good one, and as always, GG's.